Hello everybody and welcome to the answers portion of my 5th Booktube anniversary Q&A. Thank you so much for asking me so many questions, as well as so many really wonderful questions that I'm excited to answer. This will probably be in 2 parts, so I'm going to go ahead and call this part 1 of the answers. I have taken people's questions and organized them into some rough categories. This does mean I have split some people's questions up into different places if you asked multiple questions, just to organize them properly. I will try to mention everybody who asked a question, but if I do not, it's probably because somebody else asked the same question and I forgot to mention everybody because my brain is kind of shot today. Sorry, it's the day after Thanksgiving and I'm still not quite up to speed. I think my bloodstream is still nothing but sugar and fat. So with that terrible introduction, let's get started on answering all your questions. The first category of questions relate to my channel and to Booktube in general. The first one is from Respawn. I've always been curious, can you list all the books featured in your outro? I recognize quite a number of them, but a few have left me stumped. Yes, I have a list. This may change in the future. My outro is set up so I can swap out book covers of favorites as I want to, so it may definitely change in the future. But as of right now, these are all the books. Central Station, Wild Magic, Deep Secret, One of the Green Notebooks, Wrinkle in Time, Shards of Honor, The Obelisk Gate, Orbital Cloud, Amatka, Ancillary Justice, Ammonite, After Atlas, Anathem, Annihilation, among others, Games Wizards Play, Amberlow, The Gene, The Dispossessed, Dragon Singer, Fall of Hyperion, The Left Hand of Darkness, North and South, Penrick's Mission, Semiosis, The Calculating Stars, The Goblin Emperor, Europe in Autumn, Raising the Stones, Stranger in Alondria, Planetfall, The Sea in Summer, So You Want to Be a Wizard, Trading in Danger, The Quantum Thief, The Raven Stratagem, All Systems Red, Going Postal, Slow River, The Sparrow, Kalpa Imperial, Paladin of Souls, The Vor Game, Embassy Town, Hogfather, Too Like the Lightning, The Telling, The Just City, Seven Eves, Swords Point, Her Smoke Rose Up Forever, The Steerswoman, and Red Mars. Tom Lehman asks, I have a technical question. How much production time, recording, prep, editing, uploading, etc. does it take to make a weekly 15-minute video? This is not including the actual content prep. If we take one of my weekly wrap-ups as an example of a pretty standard 15-minute video, doing that from beginning to finish, sitting down, recording, dumping the footage, editing it, multiple passes of editing actually, and then uploading it, getting the description ready, and making it live, the whole process would probably take 2.5 hours. It takes me about an hour to film a weekly wrap-up that's 15 minutes long. You can usually tell the length of my raw footage because it's 3 or 4 times the length of the finished video. I take a long time to film. I always do. I do multiple takes, so it takes me, I think, longer than it does a lot of other people. The editing will take just as long as the raw footage is most of the time. I really don't think that the uploading and making it go live stage matters really. By the time I get to exporting the video and uploading it, it's just wait time. I can go off and do something else, and it's not really active time involved in that, so I don't really count it. So maybe 3 hours tops if I do count some of that. I do a lot of stuff during the editing stage. I write all of the description notes while I'm editing. I go find all the links, like I put in lots of Goodreads links to the books I mentioned. I go find all those while I'm editing as well. So yeah, by the time that I'm actually ready to export and upload the video, I'm not really actively working on it anymore. But yeah, I mean, planning for 3 to 4 hours per video is probably a good idea until you kind of get into the rhythm and really do the assembly line fashion and know what works for you. And a lot of it, of course, will depend on your editing software and how quick it is to edit that way. So I hope that answers your question. I think this really varies from person to person, and your content prep itself is really important to how quickly the rest of the process does go. So the next question is from Codex Lee. What are the main ways you feel your channel has improved over the last 5 years? I think the absolute number one thing is simply that I've gotten a lot better on camera. It's a lot less awkward to watch me now. That's just a very long process of becoming more comfortable with this whole weird setup of talking to a camera and feeling very self-conscious about it, but also becoming more comfortable in expressing myself as I am to the public in general. I get very self-conscious and awkward about it. I still get anxious, like butterflies in my stomach, before I sit down to film videos frequently, which is absurd because I have control over this whole thing and what people actually see, and yet I still get nervous about it. And also, I think I have improved at talking about books in general, being more confident in my opinions, but also just learning the format, learning how to do things. It's very difficult for me to judge for myself what has actually improved because I'm the one doing it and I'm very biased. I usually think all of my videos are absolute crap until I come back a year later and watch them. This is so predictable, in fact, that I usually just tell myself, you're gonna hate this video until a year from now. Just live with it, don't worry about it. You will feel exactly the same way about it as every other video I've ever made a year from now. It'll be fine. Muriel from the Purple Bookworm asked, I have a question you sort of answered already about the fact you started this channel in part to help out with your mental health. Anything more you can share about that? I did in fact start making videos on the internet to help with my anxiety. This is mostly because the terrible anxiety I was experiencing back in 2014 was directly related to obsessive worrying about myself and my health and stuff like that. So what I basically needed was something incredibly absorbing and time-consuming to get lost in, so I would stop thinking about some other things. And also, as it turns out, a more active social life does wonders for your mental health. So it was, I don't know if that would actually work for many other people, but for what my problem was at that time, it worked brilliantly. I will add, because I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this before, but about 6 months after I started Booktube, my anxiety flared up very badly again, and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't read, I couldn't concentrate, I wasn't enjoying anything, and I was so afraid that this anxiety problem was going to consume my life again, that it was going to prevent me from enjoying the friendships I started to build, the channel I was so interested in and doing stuff for. I actually went back to my doctor, I went back to anxiety counseling and figured that stuff out. And I'm not really sure if I would have done that when I needed to if I hadn't been so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do Booktube and enjoy it anymore, because I wanted to enjoy it so much. Rachel from the Shades of Orange asked me, do you look at your analytics much? And if so, does it affect how you create and publish content? No, I do not look at my channel analytics. I have had 2 rules from the very first day of my channel. The first one is that I can only do this for as long as it's fun. If it helps me with stress and anxiety, it's good. If it starts becoming a source of stress and anxiety, I stop doing it. That's the point at which I stopped doing Booktube. I have not reached that point yet. The other rule I have is to never, ever look at the numbers. I can get very obsessed and tangled up in the analytics and what do they mean, and I knew from the beginning I did not need that stress. So I have banned myself from looking at my channel analytics, and over the past 5 years, I think I've actually looked at analytics maybe 3 times, and very, very briefly because I needed to like answer questions or something like that. So that answers the second part of this question. No, my analytics do not affect what I create, what I publish and stuff here. I make the kind of content that I enjoy watching and that I enjoy making, and just pray and cross my fingers that other people like it as well. Andrea from Infinite Text asks, where do you see yourself in 5 years regarding Booktube? Do you think you'll keep doing this? And how do you think it will differ? Well, I don't actually have a master plan when it comes to doing Booktube. I just sort of wing it on a daily basis, and that seems to be working out relatively okay so far. So mainly, yes, I would like to still be doing this in 5 years, but I think the most important thing that will determine how that works and if it's actually a thing or not is what happens to YouTube, what happens with this platform. There have been so many ups and downs with YouTube, and it can become very difficult for creators to keep their channels going and such. I think I've sidestepped quite a few of the difficulties and the frustrations of the platform of YouTube, mainly because I've never monetized my videos, which cuts out a lot of things right off the bat, which I'm very happy about. I don't want to ever deal with monetization. I'm the type of person that could keep doing this the way I have been, day in, day out, week after week, year after year, until the platform disappears or the community disappears or something. I think both of those are unlikely. I think the most likely thing is that I would keep going until some other thing becomes more important in my life, and I don't really know what that would be at this point. Joe from Final Blow Joe asked me a series of questions. This first one is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I think. How do you consistently manage to be so amazing? Well, I don't think I'm actually that amazing. I think some people just like my personality, which is fine. I have a bit of a forceful personality sometimes. Next, what do you feel is the most important or significant effect having this channel has had on you on a personal level? I've made friends, my social group has exploded, and I have a much more active social life. I mean, I count online friendships and stuff as a real social life, but then the added bonus of being able to actually meet people and basically go on vacations together with Worldcon and such, that has got to be the absolute best thing, honestly. And kind of a corollary to that perhaps is that in general, I think I have more confidence in just being myself. When you make yourself be so public and you share so much of yourself and you get to practice at it, basically you get to practice at delivering yourself to people, I think it is a real confidence booster. I have felt the effects of that in other areas of my life, and especially at work when I'm interacting with coworkers and stuff. Then he asks, what do you feel is the next effect your channel will have on your personal life in the future, say another 5 years' time? Probably that I will travel a lot more, once again coming back to friendships and traveling to see people and going to Worldcon and such, but I see that being something I'll become increasingly comfortable doing, and probably because I'll have a lot of people to go see. That gives me a very powerful motivator, but also I get to travel with people, which obviously helps with my travel anxiety. Then he asks the classic job interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no idea at all. I would aim for still having the job I have right now. And still being satisfied with whatever type of life I have. And then finally, what is your biggest strength and also your biggest weakness? We're kind of segueing into the personal questions now. My biggest strength is probably that when I really, really want something, I go after it. My biggest weakness is succumbing to anxiety and low confidence about myself and running away from things instead of seeing them as challenges to overcome. And now for the much more personal questions about me and also my job. Lucille Renard asks, I've always been curious about your relationship status. I seem to remember you mentioning that you were on the ACE spectrum during a review of one of the Wayward Children novellas. This is true. And if you feel comfortable sharing about it online, I would be really interested in hearing a bit about your sexuality. I must admit that this is actually a bit of a difficult thing for me to talk about, not so much because I think it's private and I don't want to talk about it, but because I don't think about it very much. I don't necessarily have this all straightened out in my head and verbalized correctly or whatever, because I just don't think about it that much. And I kind of wonder if that's something that other asexual people or aromantic people as well have in common with me, is that you just don't think about it all the time. But the very short answer is I am single. I am very single. I love being single. And I am asexual. I am not, however, aromantic, which I think is a very good distinction to make. This was a very important distinction for me to learn. So I don't really like applying super specific labels to myself, but I think the most accurate way to describe me is I am an asexual bi-romantic. I've had some friends who've asked me over the years if being asexual kind of, I don't know, colors my worldview in any way, if it affects the way that I see or enjoy books or stories and stuff. And the answer is I don't think it actually affects things that much, and if it does, then I don't really know, because I've only ever experienced my life before, so I don't really know how it's different from other people. But just because I'm not interested in something personally doesn't mean that I don't see it and recognize it elsewhere in the world and kind of appreciate it for what it is, I guess, if that makes any sense. So that's pretty much the extent of my thoughts on this particular thing. Brenton Lin asked me a whole series of questions, some of them personal, some of them political, and I will attempt to answer them in kind of a rapid fire style. So 1, what are your life goals? To be content. What do you hope the balance of your life will be like in 5 years? Hopefully very much like it is now. I mainly concern myself with the balance between my personal private life and my work life, the personal versus professional, and right now it is excellent. And I would like it to stay this way, and it'll probably be quite a fight to maintain that. Did you vote in the midterms? Yes, I vote all the time, whenever I can now. What are your thoughts on the right amount of political engagement for your life or others? I think people should engage in politics as much as is good for them mentally, emotionally, physically. For myself, this is quite important. I tend to avoid even news about politics and what's going on because I just can't handle some things. It makes me too anxious, it makes me too stressed. Do I feel guilty for not being more engaged? Sometimes, yes, all the time, and I don't need that stress in my life either. I think just the rock bottom thing is perhaps I think people should vote. That is, I think, the obligation of any citizen who can vote is to actually do it. What sorts of products will you not support and boycott? For example, animal products, fossil fuels, and so on. I don't think I've ever actually boycotted any specific product, mainly because the things that I don't want to use, like, well, fossil fuels is a good example, I cannot get around to using. There's just not a real way for me to do that. Right now, pretty much the only thing that I am very serious about trying to stay away from is unnecessary plastic. Kind of creeps me out now how much plastic there is in the world. Also, I hate Amazon and am still trying to beat my addiction to Amazon. What are your opinions about socialism and libertarianism? I don't know enough about either to have an actual opinion. What new things do you want to teach yourself? And just in general, I would like to gain a lot of skills that would make me more independent if there's going to be an apocalypse. If you could redo your education, what AP college courses would you choose now? This is a really interesting question that I've actually thought about multiple times over the past couple of years. I've been out of grad school for 6 years now, so my upper education is becoming a more distant memory. But if I would just like go back in time and redo everything or go back and get another degree, it would be different. I would probably go into the sciences. I was basically an English student the first time around because my chosen major was in the English department, but I'm also very strong in math and the sciences, and there was no particular reason for me to not go into them at the time or now. So like I took physics courses as electives and really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think that if I were to redo things now, I would go into one of the sciences. I don't really know which one, but that would work really well for me. If I were to go back and get another degree, I've always thought that it would be really nice to have a Master's of Library Science in my back pocket should I ever want to go work in a library. Like, I would love to work in a library. Yeah. Do you have any grammatical pet peeves? Yes, I do. I'm not going to inflict all of them upon you because I can be very opinionated about grammar. You don't need that. Probably the biggest one is when people use adjectives when they should be using adverbs. So like saying I did that bad instead of I did that badly. People, you add ly, unless it's an irregular adverb, I suppose, but yes, I get particular. I'm probably even more particular about punctuation rules though. And the last question from Brenton is this too many questions and are they too political? No. Next, I got pretty much the same question from two people. Andrea from Infinite Text asks, would you take a chance of leaping into either writing science fiction or on board an editorial team in publishing and become more involved that way? And Rob Alden asked, I'm curious to know if you have written or intend to write speculative fiction. With all your ongoing enthusiasm, I see it as almost inevitable, which, thank you. I did write fiction. I wrote speculative fiction, mainly fantasy, when I was a child, up through my very early teens. I don't think I would go into that nowadays. It occurs to me more and more now that just because I'm good at reading books, I'm good at analyzing them, being a good reviewer is not the same thing as being a good writer who knows how to tell a story and construct a plot and build characters and stuff. Reviewing it, critiquing it is very different from actually writing it. And maybe I would be good at it. I don't really know. I'm not really drawn to writing fiction like I was when I was a kid, so probably not. But as Andrea kind of asks about maybe being more involved in the publishing editorial side of things, that is something I would not say never about because it kind of overlaps with my own interests professionally and what I actually have some experience doing. And who knows, maybe things might evolve that way. I would leave the door open for that. Seema Singh asked, what is your profession? I am a technical communicator. It's what I went to school for. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in technical communication, and I have worked professionally full-time in my field for about 10 years now. Bookish Linguist asked, do you mostly work from home? If so, how do you maintain a work-off-time balance? Yes, I've worked from home for about 6 years now, and I don't really have to travel for other reasons since the nature of my job means I can do it remotely. I don't have to actually go places. And I consider it to be one of the best perks of my job, and also one of the reasons why I have quite a good personal work-life balance. You regain a lot of your time when you work from home, when you're not commuting, when you're not being interrupted by people all the time. You become much more efficient and productive, which astonished me at the beginning. When it comes to maintaining the balance between work life and home life though, that is trickier. And for me, I have to have the physical separation between the work environment and the home environment. So I always work in my office. I never work from any other room in my house. It has to be in my office. I have to be able to step out of work into my home. I have to be able to get away mentally, if not physically, let's say. And that's really important, especially if you've had a really bad day at work and you're like, I just want to go home and get away from it all. You don't want to be having that bad day in the same room that you're going to be spending your evening in or whatever. Bookish Linguist also asked a question about hobbies. I'll talk more about this topic later, but I thought I'd just answer this here. I was also wondering if you had a hobby you wish you did more of, and if or why you don't anymore. I would love to get back into conlangs, into creating constructed languages. I don't anymore because it's very time consuming. I kind of fell out of the habit of doing it, but I would love to do more of it because I think it's fun, but also I think it's very absorbing and relaxing. And I love language and feel like I should get back to doing more linguistic stuff. Kazan from Always Doing asks, is your current profession something you were always aiming for or something that you stumbled on? Kind of both. I mean, as I mentioned before, I wrote fiction as a child. I just assumed I was going to be a writer when I grew up, but I sidestepped into writing in a completely different field. So not writing fiction, but writing, well, non-fiction in a way, writing technical things. So I did sort of achieve that childhood dream, but actually getting into technical communication, I did stumble upon that. I started taking English courses when I was 15, and then I had to declare a major when I started going to university full-time when I was 16. And so my advisor, of course, asked me, what are you interested in? What kind of degree program do we offer in the English department that you would be interested in? And I was like, I can write really well and I enjoy making websites. They didn't have anything related to website development in the entire university at the time. So they just pointed me towards technical communication because it could morph into so many things. You could take those skills into pretty much any field you wanted to write in, including actually web development and writing for the web. So I just chose it because it was the closest thing to what I sort of had in mind, and I really fell in love with it. I really love technical communication. I read about it for fun on my own time. And I've always been so happy that tech comm overlaps with many other things that I'm also interested in. So yes, I wouldn't change my profession now necessarily because I really do enjoy it. Music Bookaholic asked, do you know the first time your somatic feelings from reading about medical issues flared up? This is in reference to something I said recently about how I couldn't read medical nonfiction anymore because it triggered my anxiety. I realized that I couldn't really read medical nonfiction anymore back in 2014 when I was reading The Mind's Eye by Oliver Sacks. I'd loved his books for years, and that particular book, I was reading it at a time when I was going through a whole medical journey, and it was about his experience with cancer. I think it was actually cancer in his eye. At that point, I just kind of put the kibosh on reading medical nonfiction. The only time that I have had an actual anxiety attack from reading a book was when I picked up The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande a couple of years ago. Because hey, a whole book about the power of checklists, I wanted to read that so much. I believe Gawande is a doctor, like a medical doctor. I don't really know, but the first pages of that book were describing like this medical emergency scenario with a young girl, and I went from completely okay to having an actual full-blown anxiety attack for the first time in years within the first 10 pages of that book. And I was just like, wow, cannot do this. Not a good idea. Next, I got a couple of questions about my dog, Ava, and about pets in general. So Anna said, it's always fun to see a glimpse of Ava in a video, so can you show us Ava and maybe you could tell us a little bit about her? I will get her in a second to show to you, but a little bit about her. She is an 8-pound Yorkshire Terrier mix. I don't know what else she is, but she's definitely partly a Yorkie. She's got that coloring, that kind of fur, the two-tone fur color and stuff. She's very cute, very much like a puppy, even though she's close to 9 years old now. She's not a young dog anymore. Not that you could tell, she still zooms around the house like crazy, but I call her the rocket dog. I love her very much, but she's also a little bit of a turd. She just walked over because she heard me say her name. So you wanna come up here? Come on. All right. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I don't think she likes this very much. What do you think? Yeah? No. Maybe I will get some footage of her while she's walking around today because that's probably better. She actually sits on my lap a lot while I'm filming, but you can't see because she's so small and the camera is up so high. It's like I've got a little secret surprise on my lap. Anna also asked, are you a dog person or have you had or plan to or would like to have other pets? This is something that Vamps Rock also asked. I have only had dogs as pets and gerbils as pets. So when I was 10, 11 years old, I was very into having gerbils and I had a little gerbil breeding business, and that got shut down as you might expect, because gerbils are rodents and they reproduce very quickly, and I was quickly awash in little gerbil babies. It was really fun from the genetics side of things though. But otherwise, there have only been 2 dogs in my life. I had a dog when I was a child. Her name was Vixie, and of course Ava now. I'm not really sure if I'm a dog person or a cat person. When I was a kid, I loved cats and I wanted cats so much. I never actually had one as a pet because my dad hates cats. And then as an adult, I discovered that I'm allergic to cats. I'm also allergic to dogs, but I'm much more sensitive to cat dander, so I could never live with a cat. But I think that temperamentally, I'm more suited to cats rather than to dogs. Because I love my dog very much, but she's more demanding than I think a cat might be. And the last category of questions I'm going to answer in this part 1 are about veganism, food, and cooking. So Rachel from the Shades of Orange asked, I believe you are vegan. Are you comfortable to share why you are vegan? So yes, I call myself mostly vegan because while I am completely vegan, dietary wise, 98% of the time, there are certain things I've never been able to give up. I was completely vegan for 1 year, which was an interesting experiment that taught me there are certain things I just prefer to eat the real thing, mainly Ben & Jerry's ice cream and real yogurt, because I despise a lot of non-dairy yogurt. It just tastes awful a lot of the time. As to why I am vegan, I don't have a lot of the same reasons as other people because I'm 2nd generation vegetarian. I did not choose it, I was just raised as vegetarian. And I have chosen over the years to become stricter and much more on the vegan end of the spectrum because that's just the kind of food that I enjoy making. I find the creativity of vegan cooking, the challenge of making it, to be really fun. I don't make up recipes myself, but I just really love exploring vegan cookbooks and such. It really is the kind of food that makes me happy. On the other hand, I do agree with a lot of the reasons that many people have for, consciously becoming vegetarian or vegan, the ethical, environmental, and health reasons. I think there's truth in all of that, and I support that. But I have to be really honest that the reason I eat the way I do is because simply it's what I'm used to, and it's what I enjoy cooking and what makes me happy to eat. Emily Pettigrew asked, what is the best breakfast food? Usually my favorite breakfast food is leftovers from dinner the day before. But if I am making an effort and cooking specifically for breakfast, then it is hands down the old-fashioned Chelsea waffles from Vegan Brunch by Isa Chandler Moskowitz. I love those waffles so much. Rebecca asked, I seem to remember you are vegan. What is your favorite thing to cook, and also what vegan or other cookbooks have inspired you recently? My favorite thing to cook. Oh, that is such a hard thing to answer because I make such a variety of things and I love cooking so many dishes. I mean, pick any cookbook off of my shelf and I can probably show you 15 recipes bookmarked that I try to keep in constant rotation. I'm trying to think of something like the sheer joy of making something. I love baking muffins. Muffins have been my specialty for years and I'm quite good at making them now. But if we're talking about like dinner, an entree or something, I really love the process of making the cast iron stir fry from Isa Does It, which is one of my favorite cookbooks. It's such a fun dish to make, and I did buy a big cast iron pot specifically so I could make that recipe the way it's intended to be made. It was worth it. As for what cookbooks have inspired me recently, I'm kind of in a cookbook drought. I haven't discovered a new vegan cookbook in quite some time that I really liked. I've tried a bunch and just not really been into them. I still absolutely love Isa Chandler Moskowitz cookbooks. Vegan with a Vengeance, Vegan Brunch, Isa Does It are the 3 that are in my constant rotation. Like, I cook out of them practically every day, guys. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Probably the most recent one that's not a Moskowitz cookbook is that Fast as frack cookbook. How do you say the name of that cookbook without cursing? I don't know. This is one that I got from the library and I still need to buy a copy of for myself because I really loved a bunch of the recipes from it. I thought I would use it heavily, so I should like go out and buy a copy of that now. And that is it for part 1 of this Q&A. Thank you so much for such wonderful questions. I hope I have answered some of them at least half decently. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with part 2 very soon. And until then, bye.